Okay, so I'm back with yet another Cassandra Clare book. This time it's The Red Scrolls of Magic. Okay, can I just say, I was debating reading this because I really need to read Trials of Apollo, but I've been reading so much Malik fanfiction that I'm like, no, I need to read the actual Malik book, and it is recommended to read it straight after City of Heavenly Fire because it's set at the same time as the City of Fallen Angels, but there is a spoiler in this for City of Heavenly Fire that once you've read it, okay, this makes much more sense. Though equally, I think you could probably read it after finishing The Dark Artificers, because there's a couple of characters in this that get introduced that I'm like, who? But I know of something to do with the Dark Artificers, and that's like Malcolm Fade. He's the High Warlock of Los Angeles, which is where I'm pretty sure the Dark Artificers takes place. So yeah, he is the High Warlock of there. And he's not like a prominent character in this, but he definitely appears. So I'm sure I could understand this character a lot more if I had read the Dark Artificers first. But other than that, it's, yeah. So, what do I have to say about this? Oh, 10 out of 10, guys. 10 out of freaking 10. Possibly even 11. This was so good. It was such a lovely read. It was just what the doctor ordered. It's only 345 pages, so it's really not that long at all. And it's just so heartwarming, and so many good things happen, and yeah, it's just, and it's all from Alec and Magnus's point of views, and they're my two favorite characters in the entire franchise at the moment. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited, and yay! And honestly, it's serendipitous, because I started reading this last night, and I got up to where the bookmark is. And then today my brother comes in and a package arrived from Book Depository, and it's The Lost Book of the White. This is the second book in the Elder's Curses series. And yes, I do know that with this book, to match that cover I've got on that one, you flip this back and put this on. But, I am not willing to do that yet. I've ordered a second copy of the book. It's supposedly a special Waterstones edition, but not the Waterstones edition. I am going to order that one too. Booktopia in Australia actually has it available at the moment for pre-order, so I'm going to do that too. But this is supposed to be a different one with some artwork and stuff in it, so I've ordered it. Hopefully it will arrive. And if it's got that special cover, one of them will get sacrificed, and I will try and fit it so that the matching cover will go around it. But I'm too scared to do that right now. Anyway, point being, this book is so amazing. If you love Cassandra Clare's books, read it. If you love Magnus and Alec, read it. If you love reading books with LGBTQ plus representation, read it. Because it's just not Magnus and Alec. There's so much LGBTQ plus characters in this that I'm like, honestly, this could be called the series of LGBTQ plus. And I love it. Because we get a character in it, I won't say who because spoilers, but we get characters in it who are bisexual, gay, lesbian, asexual, and pansexual. We get all of those different ones in it, and I'm like, the only thing that could make this better is if we had trans. And I would love demisexual myself, but we had asexual, and that's close, ish. And we had pansexual, and I also identify as pansexual, so I'm like, anyway, that's it for the non-spoilery part. Well, I could read you the blurb, I guess. All Magnus Bane wanted was a vacation, a lavish trip across Europe with Alec Lightwood, the Shadowhunter who, against all odds, is finally his boyfriend. It doesn't seem like too much for the centuries-old High Warlock to ask for, but no soon have they settled in Paris, and an old friend comes with the news about a demon-worshipping cult called the Crimson Hand that is bent on causing chaos around the world. A cult that was apparently founded by Magnus himself, years ago, as a joke. Now Magnus and Alec must race across Europe to track down the Crimson Hand and its elusive new leader before the cult can cause any more damage. As their quest for answers becomes increasingly dire, Magnus and Alec have to trust each other more than ever, even if it means revealing the secrets they've both been keeping. And something else I'm annoyed about is I was going to wear a Venetian mask in this video, but I can't find it. It's gone missing. Because they go to Venice, and yeah, I didn't find it, so we're not doing it. Alright, let's get into it. This is from this point on spoilers. Spoilers. Spoilers! Okay, you've been warned. If you get upset now, it's not my fault, I told you. Okay, so we start off, and Malik are on vacation in Paris, the city of love. And I've been to Paris. It is a gorgeous city. Recommend visiting. Alec is sending home postcards, and he always puts "wish you were here," and then Magnus will put "except not really." But then on the final one, it's like he puts "wish you were here," and then he writes "except not really," and it's just like, oh. Magnus is having a mental conversation with a travel agent. Like, he was trying to figure out where to take Alec, and then so he's imagining having a conversation with a travel agent, explaining it's like, oh, he's a shadow hunter. I'm a warlock, child of a demon. He's a child of an angel. It's really quite funny. And then Magnus decides they need to ride in a hot air balloon. You'd think he would have learned after his last experience in a hot air balloon, but anyway. And it's windy. They have to fight demons, which naturally means they crash. And Alec protects Magnus in the crash so they don't actually get hurt, and he's just like, oh. Because Magnus is still not used to the fact that Alec wants to protect him, because he's so used to people assuming he can protect himself. So they get fresh clothes and they have dinner. And then they do stargazing, and Alec's like, I don't have anything to teach you. He's like, yes you do, what does this mean? And then it leads to ruin explorations, which then leads to kisses, and is getting whoo, so they head back to the apartment for it to get whoo. But then it's like they frantically get in, they're literally tearing off each other's clothes. And then Tessa's there, and it's like, Tessa, darling, I love you, but you couldn't have waited an hour. And yeah, it turns out she's there because there's this Crimson Hand, the demonic cult, which is causing trouble, and Magnus is said to have founded it. It's the Great Poison or something, and the Spiral Labyrinth wants to bring him in, but Tessa's like, he didn't do it, just let him sort this out and prove that he didn't do it, okay? And then turns out Magnus's memory has been tampered with. He can't remember it. It's like, it sounds about right, but then just as he gets to like the thing, he's like, I can't remember. Then we see Magnus and Tessa's friendship, and I'm like, yes! Warlock BFFs! We've lost hours, character references, and I'm like, ooh, that makes me excited to read Lost Hours! And more details about the Spiral Labyrinth and Warlock culture, and I'm like, honestly, I'm here for this. Give me all of the details! Alec is steadfast in his loyalty to Magnus. He's like, look, Magnus, I know you. You could have never have done this, so don't worry. I'm in this with you. And the Red Scrolls of Magic get mentioned. The name of the book! Apparently that's like their holy scripture or whatever of the cult. And so it's time to stop the Great Poison, the leader. So Magnus scrapbook searches trying to figure out the memory thing, to figure out exactly where it stops so that he can go to where it is. And Alec explores Paris and calls home while this has happened. So he checks in with Izzy, and then Jace demands to speak to him, and yeah. He also gets very introspective, thinking on about how much he loves Magnus, but also Magnus's exes, and then taking the next step. He tries to get Jace's advice on how to engage the next step, and then realizes that was a terrible idea. So Magnus finds where the missing memory leads to, and Alec tells him that there is no way Magnus is doing this without him. Because Magnus tries to leave him behind in Paris, and Alec's just like, no. Magnus, I'm going with you. So they arrive at the Shadow Market. Surprise, surprise! They don't like Shadow Hunters. So the Shadow Market is basically, it's a market run by downworlders, and it's got all sorts of things that you can't get in ordinary markets, so like Sealy blood or something. And so surprise, so it's not necessarily legal. So, surprise, surprise, they don't like that the Shadowhunter's there. So, Magnus and Alec have to separate if Magnus is going to get any information about the Crimson Hand. And we meet Johnny Rook the Crook, and I believe he's a character in the Dark Artificers. I don't like him. He uses his son for criminal activity. Don't like you. And he's a mundane with the sight. And he's hiding from Shadowhunters. And so he tells Magnus that the Crimson Hand worships Asmodeus, now accounting for taste. For those of you who don't realize, Asmodeus is Magnus's father, a prince of hell, and an all-around bad dude. And so the password is Asmodeus. You know, they're real geniuses here. And there's a warlock on the run from the Crimson Hand, heading for Venice. And then it goes to Alec, and then Alec turns up and he's filthy, and you're like, what happened? And so then the next chapter is Alec's point of view as all of this is going on. And he gives a starving Fey girl money. Because she tries to pickpocket Magnus, and Alec stops her, and then he realizes she's starving, so he gives her money instead. And it's like, stop stealing things. And he's like, wait, that was a Fey. Was that even true? And then thinks about his parents' reactions to this vacation. Maurice she didn't have a negative reaction, really. But, Roberts was not pleasant. He told him to stay behind and pretend to be straight. Lovely parenting there. And spots a warlock following Magnus, attacks, and a small fight ensues. She gets away. To Venice via train. And it turns out that train is the freaking Orient Express. Of course it is. And more Downworlder prejudice, because there's sort of a Downworlder party going on, and yet they don't like Alec. And then Malik has a lovely dinner together, and then things are about to again get hot and heavy when they get interrupted. And this time it's demons with absolutely no sense of timing. And Alec saves a werewolf girl, Juliet, changing her opinions on Shadowhunters, or at least Alec. That's page 86. And Alec asks her to feed Rose, the Fey girl, because she's like, I'll do anything you tell me. And he's like, oh, well, you know that Fey girl, she looks starving in the Shadow Market in Paris? Because you're from Paris, right? She's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, can you feed her? And I'm like, that's all he wants. I'm like, you have the biggest heart, I swear. And then Magnus is grabbed by a tentacle, and I'm like, no hentai, please. And Alec is a Banff. Like, he fights I don't know how many Ramun demons trying to get to Magnus. But he's now poisoned by the Ramun demons. And there's so many of them. And he frees Magnus from the tentacle demon. And then a warlock lady saves... from the Shadow Market is here to save the day. And Alec is unconscious. Alec is better, yay! The warlock is... okay, I'm going to butcher this name, so I just apologize right now. Shin Yun, Jung, and a Banff. Her mark is an affectless face, so like she had no emotions whatsoever. She talks and it's nothing. I don't know. I don't really get it. And she wants to stop the Crimson Hand. And then the tentacle demon turned out to be a Ramun brood mother. Of course it is. Lovely. The Downworlders on the train now like Alec, even buying a few drinks at the bar. And it's team up time. The Crimson Hand wants to kill Magnus. Also, they're killing mundanes and Downworlders so they can summon a greater demon. Really, they're geniuses. The end of part 1. And in the next part 2, they're at Venice, and it is beautiful, and I've been to Venice. I can say it is a gorgeous place. I highly recommend visiting before it, gets buried underwater. Breakfast. A very important meal. Shiyun is such a Banff. Like, she's such a Banff. And then her and Alec are becoming, like, demon-killing besties. They're discussing the best way to kill demons. And then there's a Downworlder party to celebrate the defeat of Valentine. Magnus was not originally on the list, but they add him to it. And then it's shopping time. Because, obviously, if you're going to a party in Venice, you need the right outfit. And shopping was fun. Everyone looks fabulous. And a little bit of a competition between the warlocks to see who could get the best outfit. the downworlders really need to trust Alex. When they get there, he gets like a serious pat down, and they take his bow and arrow, and I'm just... Ugh. The party is in full force. Malcolm Fade is here, and Johnny Rook. And Kat was there, and I was like, yay, Kat, darling, good to see you. And Hepatita Vex is here. Apparently her and Magnus used to be close, and she ran a salon in the 1900s. So again, a Lost Hours character. Xingyun used to be part of the cult. Okay. Malik insecurities. It's like, does he really love me? Does he really care for me? Love this chapter. Page 40 and page 42, LGBTQ plus rep. Because you get Sensiak. So Raphael is there, and he's like, I'm not gay, I'm not straight, I'm not interested. And Alex like, your sexuality is not interested? It's like, yes. And then you get Lily just coming along and be like, he's like, I saw you making out with a fairy girl. And she's just like, which one? I made out with 6 fairy girls, 5 fairy boys, and a toadstool of whose gender I'm unsure of, but it was a sexy toadstool. Pansexual bride. Helen is here. Helen Blackthorn with the guy who has a crush on Alec. And Malik actually saved them in Paris when they attacked the demons when they're in the hot air balloon. It was them. They were the shadow hunters. And then there's the Malik dance, and he's so sweet and lovely. And Bat is the DJ. And then someone crashes the party. Literally. It's a warlock fight. It's this building crumbling because Malcolm Fade threw a party, and apparently Barnabas wanted to throw the party, and he bought the place first, and it's a whole... Basically, it was the bigger dick issue. And Alec goes into protective mode TM, and he saves Kat and the other downworlders, and it's just fabulous. And so they split up, and Alec's gonna save the guests while Magnus stops the warlocks. And Kat likes Alec now, and it's like, at last, a keeper. And Alec saves everyone. Like, he starts, like, he gets everyone out, and then he gets one of, Elliot, he's a vampire, one of Raphael's, and he gets to get him up to the 2nd level, and he starts continuing to rescue people, and he drops them down into Elliot's arms, so it's fun. And Magnus stops the fight, and then we have interaction between Magnus and Raphael, and I'm learning that Raphael's default mode is just rude. It doesn't matter if he likes you or not, he's just always rude. And then Alec and Raph reach an understanding, exchange phone numbers, and then off to the dungeon. Also, Maury is dead. That was the warlock they needed to get information from, but he's dead now, so it's a moot point. Magnus definitely founded the cult as a joke, though. Lovely. Guilty because people are hurt over a freaking joke. Alec is protective of Magnus, and Magnus is in love. And Malcolm apparently fell in love with a Shadowhunter once, and he said, I do not ever want another love. Okay. And then it's to Rome! And we have a road trip, and Alec speaks to Izzy. She sends more copies of the Red Scrolls, because I actually found some at the dungeons. And Alec almost crashes the car. It's camping time. And Magnus tells Alec about his stepfather. And Alec responds by saying, you save people. You saved yourself, and you saved so many others. And that's the end of part 2. And then they're safely in Rome now, and again, almost sexy times. But this time Alec's like, no, we can't, not while we're frantic about the Crimson Hand. Once this is over, then we can. Shayun is off to speak to her contacts, and Alec is off to the Rome Institute. Hopefully it goes well. And then this next chapter was just brilliant, okay? Elaine is here. Yes, I'm so happy. And then we have Elaine and Helen's meet cute. They get into an argument like 3 times. It's just so cute. And and then Leon is a chaotic bisexual and hits on Alex, who doesn't so much have a crush on Alex as wants to have sex with him. And then it's a team up, time for demon hunting. Shayun's whole village tried to kill her, and the Crimson Hand rescued her. Well, that's depressing. Little intelligence is gathered by the Team Warlock. And then awesome Shadowhunter team up. So we get Elaine, Helen, and Alec, and I'm like, honestly, at the moment, you're my favorite trio. And Alec calls Raph to check on something, and then he works out that Xinyun, is the leader of the Crimson Hand. The F girl, I trusted you! And now she's poisoned and kidnapped Magnus. She's adopted Asmodeus, because she keeps saying she was his daughter, and I'm like, you're what? And then Magnus is like, no, I could tell if you were the child of a greater demon. She's like, no, but I adopted him. And I'm like, oh, that makes it worse. Then she's, and she was right. The only way to get to Magnus was to separate him from Alec, because apparently she did try and get him in the Shadow Market and a bunch of other times, but Alec kept getting in the way. And so she's like, okay, no, I just need to separate them. And she's enraged Magnus now because she had trapped Alec with these fire things along with the other two, and it's, yeah. And I love the trio of Alec, Elaine, and Helen, and then the couple that stays together because Elaine and Helen go back to back, and it's and I'm like, yes! And we go more into depth into Helen's character, which is awesome for when I get into the Dark Artifices, and she talks about how much she loves her family and how hard she's trying to prove that she is a good shadow hunter because the Clave don't trust her. And you're just, when you realize what happened at the end of City of Heavenly Fire and how they betrayed her like that, I'm like, no, Helen's done nothing but try to be a good shadow hunter. And they go off to save Magnus, and Elaine's like, I'm going with you, Alec. And Helen's just like, oh, you lunatic Lightwood, of course I'm coming with you. Yeah, because Elaine and Alec have been friends since childhood, just saying. And the ritual has started, and Xinyun's name is the cursed daughter, and I'm like, well, cursed is right. And Magnus thinks of Alec and his friends as he's going through it, and I'm like, whoa. And my fave trio is here, y'all. They're kicking ass and they're taking names. And Magnus didn't found a cult of evil. It was like a pleasure cult. It was hedonist pleasure, but they didn't hurt people. They took money from the rich and saved warlock children. That was the whole premise of the cult. She has twisted it. And Asmodeus still got summoned and took Magnus's memories. It was Asmodeus who took Magnus's memories. Then Xinyun loses control because Bernard wants it, who's this random mundane member of the cult who thinks he's the leader. And then Alec and the girls are here, and then Bernard gets possessed by a great demon, and then Alec must rescue the right Magnus, because Magnus and Xinyun are trapped in this pentagram and they can't get out, and then when Alec looks in, when he finally gets close enough, there's a bunch of them there, and he has to rescue the right one. And then Asmodeus proves he's the worst parent ever, because of course the greatest demon that gets summoned is Asmodeus. And I'm like, lovely, this son of a bitch again. And when Xinyun realizes that Magnus is the son of Asmodeus, like, actually, she's just like, what? And it's like, and Asmodeus is like, oh yes, I said it would be a family reunion. I didn't say it would be yours. And then basically he wants to steal someone's immortality, and he wants Xinyun's, because apparently Magnus is the only one of his children that's ever lived more than a couple of 100 years without going crazy. But he'll take Magnus's in a pinch if Magnus won't do it. And obviously Magnus won't do it, so Xinyun's about to kill him. And he calls him his eldest curse. Hence the title of the whole series, The Eldest Curses. And Xinyun has her dreams crash around her. She's crying. It's honestly quite painful. And it turns out Asmodeus helped Magnus kill his stepfather, and I'm like, I'm glad Magnus isn't dead, but I'm not glad you helped him. And Alec knows which Magnus is real, and later on he says he knew because the only one who wasn't attacking was him. And Magnus stops Asmodeus with a little bit of Alec's strength. And Alec tells Elaine and Helen that all of them need to change the Clave's laws from the inside. Honestly, that was such a beautiful scene. It's like, yeah, basically when they stop Asmodeus, they stop all of the cult things, and they're talking, and it's just, And then Shinyu will be tried, and the Shadowhunters from the Rome Institute arrive, and they're just sorting everything out. But Alec lets Shin-Yun go, and I'm like, well, I don't think that's going to end well. And then Elaine and Helen decide to go on a first date and have a first kiss, and Elaine is gay panic TM. And everything is wrapped up nicely, and the four agree to never mention it again. Because they're trying to work out who they're going to pin the blame on to be the leader of the cult when everything went wrong, because Shin-Yun's got away, and obviously we don't want to blame Magnus. But Bernard's there, and he's claiming to be the leader, so it's just like, let's go with it. He was the leader, it was all his fault. And that's the end of part 3, and then we have a sweet little epilogue. Malik says goodbye, and Elaine and Helen are going to be together, and Malik go back to New York, and they finally get their alone time. We don't read it, which I'm okay with. Actually, pretty okay with that. But then the final scene happened. I was feeling all warm and fuzzy. And then the final scene happened. Shin-Yun goes back to the village, her birthplace. And she's got 2 demons following her. She goes into this place and she's talking to this green-skinned warlock. Sorry. Goes in and finds it's green-skinned warlock. Kicks him, and the warlock's like, yeah, Magnus ended up being harder than you thought he would be, huh? And it's like, it's fine, I have another plan. And no one's gonna come to save you, because everyone thinks you're dead. Ragnar fell, and Ragnar is alive! Ragnar's alive! Ragnar's alive! I'm not okay! You leave Ragnar alone! How is it? How? What happened? How are you alive? Like, I'm glad, but not glad, because you're in the clutches of a sadistic, evil warlock. But how are you alive and thought you were dead? I grieved! And I might grieve again if she kills you before we get you out of there, and I'm like... Yeah, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. Like, I'm happy Ragnar's alive, but... He's in the clutches of a mad person, and because of this, I want to immediately go into this to find out if they save Ragnar, but I can't because this will spoil everything for the Dark Artificers for me. But I'm just like... Ragnar! Okay, I have to do an addendum onto my Red Scrolls of Magic. First things first, this is written by Cassandra Clare and Wesley Chu. He was actually responsible for the main bad guy in this. He's guy generic, I'm not giving anything away. But for the main bad person in this, he was responsible. He came up with the character. So Wesley Chu was just as much involved, despite the fact that for some reason on this cover, his name is in tiny print. And I'm like, seriously? Why? Anyway, the main thing I wanted to talk about is the interactions between the Downworlders in this book. So the interactions between Magnus and his fellow warlocks, so Tessa, Malcolm Fade, Katrina, Hepita? I don't know her well enough yet, I haven't memorized the name. But you know who I'm talking about, Hepita Vex. Her last name is Vex. And, yeah, and then the interactions between the vampires themselves, so Raphael, Lily, and Elliot, and then just the whole Downworlder party, and it's all just fascinating, and honestly, it's made me wish that Cassie would write another book, like the Shadowhunter Codex, but written by the Downworlders. So you'd have a warlock write the warlock section, and a werewolf write the werewolf section, a fae write the fae section, and a vampire write the vampire section. I just think that'd be really good. You could call it like the Downworlders Guide to the Shadow World. I think that would be a good, worthwhile thing to do. Because like we learned with the warlocks, there's this thing called the Spiral Labyrinth, which is where Tessa is for a lot of the time. Like we knew she was there in the thing, but we didn't really discuss what the Spiral Labyrinth is, and it seems to be where a lot of warlocks go, and it's a place that's for like research and study, furthering magic things, and there's a council there that's put themselves in charge of all the warlocks, and if a warlock starts doing something stupid, like forming a demon cult, they will try and stop them before the clave does, and that sort of thing, or they'll bring it to the clave if they don't think they can handle it by themselves. I found that fascinating to read, and just, I loved that. And seeing Raphael's relationship with Magnus in a place where they're not about to die was really, really cool. And honestly, we got best Raphael in this book. Like, this Raphael's like, where were you in the rest of the series? You were helpful in this one. Yeah, like I said, his default setting is rude, even if he cares about you. He's rude to Lily and Elliot, and he cares about them. He's rude to Magnus, and he cares about him. It's just who he is. And we get this awesome moment with Alec and Raphael. Like, he gets Raphael's number, and he's like, I need to make a call. It's like, I need to make a call. And he's with Helen and Elaine, and Helen thinks Magnus is guilty, or at least he's looking like he's guilty. And Alec's doing his best to try and persuade her not to, but then so there was this warlock they were looking for, like everyone was looking for because he knew something about the cult, and he was apparently killed by a vampire. And then he was like, look, I'm gonna make a call just to check, okay? And it's like, wait, you have his phone number? And it's like, yes. And it's like, and then she looks at Elaine and it's like, look, I promise he isn't guilty. I know he's doing a good job of looking at it right now, but I promise he isn't. Yes. And just the interactions between Raphael, Lily, and Elliot made me really, really happy. Because, well, if those of you don't know, but I love Lily. And I just... Raphael's like the tired dad corralling the kids, pretty much. Because Elliot, he seems to have a taste for interesting blood. And he bit a bunch of different downworlders. Like, I think it was a mermaid and a Sealy, and yeah, it's just, okay, and a Naiad, I don't, and yeah, and he helped Alec rescue people and whatnot. I mentioned that, but that was cool. And it was really, really good. And it was good to see everyone's attitudes change to Alec when he proved that he would protect anyone, as long as you aren't a demon. And that his first instinct is to protect, not attack. So, by the end of this book, like, Alec's got a bunch of downworlders who like, and I'm like, yes! Yes, 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 yes! And, yeah, just the relationships between Magnus and stuff, like, the Vex lady tells Magnus, like, to be careful, because he's considered one of the most respected warlocks in the downworlder community. And what he's doing with Alec might give other people ideas, and just to be careful, and that sort of thing. And I'm just like, my boy Magnus. He's so fabulous. And whenever we heard about Ragnar, because he would think about Ragnar from past interactions, we find out Ragnar was the one who trained him in magic and how to control it. He's known Ragnar since he was a teenager, and I'm like, and it makes that whole ending just that much worse, because I'm like, he's alive, but being held by the psychotic witch, no. And I'm just, yeah, sorry. I can gush about this book forever, just read it. Read it. Okay, this addendum went on for way too long. So yeah, this book was amazing. Highly recommend reading it. Highly, highly, highly recommend reading it. And you'll be seeing other book talks from me for the other books in the series, because I've got a special edition that's arrived of Lord of Shadows, and I've given in and I've ordered paperback versions of Ghost of the Shadow Market and Queen of Air and Darkness. And once those arrive, I'll have the entire thing and I'll marathon it again. I just hope I read Trials of Apollo first. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to me, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this nonsensical rant, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and if you did enjoy it, like, comment, maybe even subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye, guys!